Hi guys! So my 2016 Spring Hobonichi Cousin has arrived, and I thought that it would be fun to do a flip through of it and also compare it to last year's version, just so that you can see what's the same and what's different. It's quite similar, but there are a few interesting changes. So if you've never had a cousin and you're curious to see what they're like, hopefully this will give you enough of an overview that you can get a feel for it. And if you have had one and you're wondering whether this year's is different, then hopefully that will be useful for you as well. So first of all, as you can see, the covers are identical. They haven't changed anything in the design, except obviously the year. And then when you open it, it's also identical, except that obviously I have personalized my 2015 cousin, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff stuck on it and it's all written in and everything. The year at a glance is the same. In the Cousin, the A5 version, it's printed on plain paper, whereas in the A6 version, the year at a glance is on gridded paper. So I'm not sure why that's different, but it's the same in both the 2015 and 2016 Cousins. Then when you go on, the monthly vertical spread is the same as well. So it's really only when you get to the month on 2 pages that you start to see a difference. So the actual layout is the same. There haven't been any changes in the design, but what is interesting is this one feature that they've changed. So I'll just show you what I mean by illustrating it in last year's Cousin. So because the Spring Cousin runs over 2 years, this runs from April 2015 to March 2016, you'll get a couple of months from 2015 that are the same in 2016. So what I mean is, for example, here we have February 2016, and here we have February 2015. So if you compare them side by side, you'll see that they look identical, and at a glance, there's no way to tell one apart from the other, except that if you look in the top left-hand corner, this says 2015 and this says 2016. But theoretically, if you were just looking at it quickly, it would be possible to confuse them. And if you're looking at this, you might think, am I looking at 2015 or 2016? Obviously, being planner addicts, we probably will all have bookmarks and page flags and things like that, so that it's not a huge danger, but it is still possible to confuse them because they look identical. So in the 2016 version, they've sorted this out in this really clever way. So for all of the 2017 months, because this planner runs from April 2016 to March 2017, and you get a few extra months in the month on 2 page spreads, they've put 2017 in gray, so it's kind of unobtrusive, but it's still very easily visible. So you see, if you compare your two Februaries, we've got February 2016, which doesn't have anything here, and then February 2017. So I think that this is a really nice touch because it means that there's no way that you would ever confuse yourself by looking at the wrong February. And I could definitely imagine doing that. So I think that that was a really nice addition. Then if we move on, the next section is the week on 2 pages. And this is again identical in format. They haven't changed anything here, which I think is really nice because let's face it, it was, pretty perfect before, so why change anything? The only thing that's different is that they've added English weekdays. So if you can see here, you just have the date and then the Japanese day of the week, whereas on this one, the box is the same size, but the Japanese weekday has become smaller to make room for the English weekday, so you get both of them. So I don't feel that that's really necessary because it didn't take long for me last year to learn to recognize the Japanese weekdays, but I think it's a nice touch because as Hobonichi's become more popular internationally, it makes sense to have the weekdays in English as well. And it also kind of matches the month on 2 pages because those were already bilingual anyway. So if you see last year's, you had the English weekdays here anyway. So I think it just makes sense for them to have it on the week on 2 pages as well. So this continues, everything is exactly the same other than the weekdays. It continues until the last week of March, and it's the same here, so you get a full year going from the beginning of April to the end of March. So there's a little bit of overlap in that the first week of the 2016 week on 2-page spreads is the same as the last week of the 2015 week on 2-page spreads. So obviously this causes the dilemma whether you should continue using your old techo right up until the end or switch over to the new one. And I think, knowing myself, that I will probably be switching over to the new one, because by this point it's a bit more than a month away. I'll be really excited to switch into the nice new shiny one. Then we get the real, I'd say the only main difference between the two planners. What happens next is, in the 2015 version, so officially this spring techo starts in April, the beginning of April, but they give you a bit of extra, like, kind of space so that you can start early. So the month on 2-page spreads start in February. So you can already start those in February if that's of any help. And last year, they also gave you March as a, like, kind of in the daily spread. So obviously the daily spreads are normally day per page, but they start in April, but they threw in March, and they gave you March as 2 days per page. So it was just kind of like an added extra, so you could actually start a month early. And I thought that that was really nice, because last year when I got my techo, I got it in February, and I couldn't wait until April to start using it. So all I had to do was use the monthly pages for, like, kind of the last couple of weeks of February, which was a bit cramped, but I managed because I was so keen to start using it. And then I could use these 2 days per page March spreads kind of like as a weekly until the weekly kicked in at the beginning of April. And that worked out really well, and I was happy that I had that. So this year they've taken that away, and I think that the reason that they've done that makes sense. Apparently it was customer feedback about unused pages. So if you had a cousin last year and now you get a new one, so this is the position that I'm in now, you wouldn't need those extra pages for March because you'd still have your old techo, so they would kind of be pointless. So instead what they've done, which I think is really nice, and they've done this both in the A5 and the A6, so if you've got the A6 you know about this, they've taken out that extra month, the 2 days per page March section, and instead they've replaced it with a single page at the beginning of each month that just has the month name and the number, and then it says remember this, and it has 12 faint dotted lines. So the paper isn't actually gridded, but you can see the reflection of the grids from the previous page, so you can use them to write in the same way. And the colors are the same as the colors for the month. So one of the really nice things about the Japanese planners, the A5 and the A6 version, is that they have a different color for the monthly tabs and also for the grids for every month. And I think that that's one of the things that drew me to it, is that it's just really nice having this beautiful array of colors taking you through the year. And that hasn't changed, by the way. So if you compare this to the 2015 version, you can see you've got all of the same. Not sure how well you can see that on the side, especially because this is really grubby, but the colors are the same. So for example, April is this kind of pink color, and that's the same. So I think it's really nice that they've kept that, because once you're used to having a Hobonichi, you kind of get familiar with the color scheme, and so it's sort of reassuring to have it be the same from year to year. And because they're really nice colors, there would be no reason for them to change them. So, you know, you kind of start to know that October is purple and April is pink and so on. So I kind of feel like I'd like to use this monthly page for something special, because it seems like a really nice addition that could be utilized. So it depends on how you use this. The way that I use the daily pages are, I just use them for notes. So I haven't been using them with any relation to the dates. I just use as many as I need whenever I need them. And so something like this would be kind of redundant. I'm not really sure how I'd use it. What I was thinking would be nice is to make each month into a section, let's say. So if you wanted to use this in the similar way to how you'd use a ring-bound planner and say, for example, have 1 month allocated for finances, then this could be our index for the finances. Or for me, because I use it for work, I could have 1 month allocated for a certain type of project, like notes for ideas for research projects, and then have this be the index, and then have another month allocated for students' marks and results and coursework, and then have this be the index, and so on and so forth. I didn't do it this way last year. I just used all of this for notes, just random notes of whatever like kind of seemed relevant at whatever I needed it for at the time. And then I allocated the last couple of months for reference. So for things that I wanted to be able to come back to and check again. And I'm thinking that maybe this year I will kind of extend that section. So let's say allocate the last 2 months for reference, and then use each of these pages, each of these kind of like introductory monthly pages as an index. Possibly make this one say stuff that is related to teaching, and then this one stuff that's related to research, and then like maybe this one stuff that's related to admin. Maybe I would allocate 3 months for that, because I think I'm going to end up with extra unused pages for this year. So it would be fine to allocate the months in a more structured way than I did this year, if that makes sense. Obviously, if you're using this as a daily planner or a journal, you won't need it for that, but this could still be like a kind of either like a maybe monthly vision board or your overall goals for the month or something like that. So I think that this is a really nice feature. Incidentally, remember this page, the kind of like monthly reminder page, just carries on from whatever the previous page was. So the side of the page that it's on varies, if you see what I mean. So this one for November is on the right hand side of the page, whereas this one for January is on the left hand side. So that's really the only major addition. The only other thing is that, just as in the case of the week on 2 page spread, in the day per page they've also added in English days of the week. So if you compare these two, you can see that the old one just had the Japanese day of the week, whereas this one has got the English day as well. Then if we go to the end, there's another small difference. So you've got your daily pages that carry on like this, and they haven't changed anything from last year in terms of the schedule for this. So it was my friend the Sassy Pineapple who pointed this out. I'd never thought about it, but when she mentioned it, I couldn't stop thinking about it because it's such a good observation. So the timeline for this is modeled on the A6 version, right? So the A6 version, this is what it looks like. Obviously, it's half the size. And so you have this timetable that it's a 24-hour timetable, but they only give you a number every 3 hours, and then the other 2 numbers are represented by dots. And it kind of fills up most of the page on the A6 version. For some reason, on the A5 version, they have just kept the same format, so you only get your timetable sort of like running over the top half of the page, and then the whole bottom half is blank. And I don't understand why they've done that. It seems like it would have made more sense for them to kind of spread out this timetable so that you got numbers for every hour, and so that it was kind of a bit more like the timetable on the day on 2 page spread, which is really extensive and detailed, and you have every half hour marked, and well, you have a line for every half hour, and then you have every hour marked. So I don't know if they would have, maybe they didn't want to go into that much detail, but they still could have, written out 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and actually had it extend over the whole page. So I think that would be like one of my only wishes for future designs, that they would extend this timetable, because I think that would make it more useful if you do actually use this for daily planning. It's still fine as it is, it's not a problem, and I don't actually use this like that anyway, so it doesn't matter to me, but I think in general terms it would be more useful to have it like that. And then you have this line as well that kind of only extends down to here, and the rest of this is blank, and you still have your 5 check boxes. So once we get to the end, there's another difference. So last year, 31st of March, and then you had 1 page of graph paper. Here, because they took away that March section with the 2 days per page, and then they replaced it with 12 pages of the like monthly introductory page, goal page. They ended up with some extra pages, and so you have 8 pages, 8 of graph paper, of just of blank, undated, gridded paper, instead of 1, which I think is really nice, because if you are using these daily pages as a daily planner or journal, then it can be quite convenient to have some extra undated pages at the back. If you're not using it for that, if you use it like me and you just use this for notes, then it still doesn't hurt to have a few extra gridded pages. And then the back matter is the same. So you have anniversaries, favorites, graph paper, timetable. This is really useful. I'm going to use this to mark off my teaching timetable when I start teaching in October. Gifts, and then you have some other things like important events in human history, and like ages and addresses and stuff like that. And then and that hasn't changed, that's exactly the same. And then in both of them you have this kind of back page with the like stamp, sort of the unique Tetra stamp, and then the back page, and then the end. So very similar, a couple of nice additions. I'm obviously really happy with this because I loved my 2015 cousin, and so when the year ends I'm just going to transfer over into this one. Maybe, like I said, try to figure out a more systematic way of using those daily pages with the remember this page at the front, because I think that's a nice touch. And other than that, I'll just carry on as I was before. So I hope that this was useful. If you have never had a cousin before and you're thinking of getting one and you have any questions, please let me know, because I love discussing all things Hobonichi. And if you did have one last year and you're curious about what the differences are this year, I hope that this has been helpful. I said very subtle differences, but some nice changes. So I hope you enjoyed this. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye!